very discouraging, if I could use that word, of further expansion of charter schools. This strikes me as bizarre, frankly, as someone
How do you really feel?
as someone who's devoted to reducing the achievement gap. The very well-known and I think largely unimpeachable Credo study that found across the country some rather mixed results for charter schools, actually rather poor in some cases, was very clear that in New York City, particularly the charter schools under the management organizations, but in general, have done an extraordinary job, including in mathematics, for example, an average of 6 months greater learning per year than matched students in other schools. We have 50,000 families on waiting lists for charter schools. Are they all misguided? Why do you want to keep what's clearly a very effective model for many of our least privileged students from more of them?
I think, well, obviously you are presenting the question in a certain light. Let me recast. You're leading the witness. So I think what you said at the beginning is accurate, that we've seen mixed results. There are some very good charter schools, and I'm glad we have them. And there are some that have not done well, and I think part of the challenge until the very end of the Bloomberg years was acknowledging the fact that they are mortal, and some work well, some don't. But I think my central concern is this. The equality point, first of all, in terms of who is the composition of the student body of any school. We know, it's a fact, that some charter schools have done an extraordinary job of being inclusive of all types of students, mirroring the realities of the districts they're in, focused on English language learners and special ed kids. In fact, there are charters that went out of their way to get even more English language learners and special ed kids. A lot of people would argue that was the original motivation of the charter movement, was to reach those in greatest needs and need. We also know there are charters that have gone out of their way to underrepresent some challenging populations. So in traditional public schools, we don't have that choice. We are there for everyone, and in traditional public schools, we are carrying 95% of the burden right now, meaning 95% of our children in our public school system go to traditional public schools. That number is fundamentally not going to change under any model, in my opinion. And our central task for the future of our city is to address the challenges of the traditional public schools. So one part of my view is the charter debate has taken us away from what we have to do to get to the core of the changes we need to make. When we're not talking about after school, we're not talking about early childhood education and a number of other things, we are obscuring the core questions. I think you're right to say there are parents who would like to get their child to a charter school, lots of them. But here's my logic. They would like that because their local school still is not, their local district school is still not doing a good enough job. You offered the sunny statistics of the Bloomberg years. I would say the downside, and it's not an indictment of Bloomberg per se, it's an indictment of decades, is if we're still not getting it right at the district school level, that is or has to be our central focus, not to replace with another option that I think is questionable, and I just explained why. I don't think charters are a panacea. I think the core work of our times is to get the foundations of education right, and that begins with early childhood. If we haven't done early childhood, why are we even having the discussion?
Well, because those